Hello, everybody, and I want to welcome you to the inaugural episode of my new book club, books that I think are important, with a capital I, for anybody working in and around women's health. So I have been a fan of Emma Brockwell for a long time, and I cannot tell you how pleased I was when she said that she would come on, and she doesn't know she's the first guest, but she is, because this book, Why Did No One Tell Me? I think should be required reading for every women's health physio and fit pro, and I think every woman who is either going to give birth or who has given birth, because I'm fond of saying once you've had a baby, you're postnatal forever. But Emma, this is just such a great service to women's health, this book that you've put out, and I want to talk about the book, and I want to talk about the return to running guidelines and your podcast and so much. But if you just want to introduce yourself and maybe just a little bit about your path into the wonderful world of women's health.
Oh my goodness. First of all, I'm having a bit of a moment that I'm the first person on here and that I'm even speaking to you, because I'm going to say it, I'm just a massive fan. And actually, the reason I'm probably here is hugely in part to you. It is, and I'll come on to why. There is a helicopter outside. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you're fine.
So sorry. So I'm Emma Brockwell. I'm a mum of two. I'm also a stepmom to my stepdaughter, and I'm a pelvic health physiotherapist. I have been practicing as a pelvic health physiotherapist now for about 9.5 years or thereabouts. But prior to that, I was a musculoskeletal physiotherapist and had been in practice for about 8 years. So I've been doing physio for, it's so depressing when you think of the years, isn't it? For some time now. I used to like it when I could say I was a physio and I'd only been qualified for 5 years. I felt quite young, but clearly I'm not anymore. I'm also a runner. I'm not a particularly good runner, but I love running for what it brings for my mental health, for my physical health, and actually for my social life. It's a big part of my life here where I live. That's I guess the three main parts of me: running, wife and mum, and gosh, my husband's going to love me for that, and pelvic health physiotherapist.
Brilliant. So I think, I really just want to dive into the book, Why Did No One Tell Me? Because I really feel, and again, I was saying this before we started recording, I think sometimes we live in a little bit of a bubble in our pelvic health, women's health universe.
Yeah, we do.
But it really feels like over the past year or two, there's just been this surge of interest in both postnatal recovery, but also I would say in the female athlete.
Mm-hmm.
And some really exciting researchers out there, people like Kirsty Elliott-Sales doing amazing work, and Kelly McNulty. But I feel like we started this journey with the publication of the return to running guidelines, which are covered in the book. But I wonder if you could how did they come about? How, our mutual friend Grania was involved as well, and of course Tom Goon, all hail. Yeah. But how did this all come about? What led you three to come together to put out this really seminal piece of writing, I think?
Well, thank you very much. How did it come about? The big word for me is collaboration. I think what I've loved, particularly in the past 18 months, is seeing how we are all collaborating more. I don't think working in our silos quite so much. I think we still are a bit, but it's a work in progress. I think physios are amazing at collaborating with other healthcare professionals, fitness professionals, and each other. And Grania and I have always had a mutual respect on Instagram. Social media has a lot to answer for this. And we've always had a bit of a natter on messages. And then my big passion is running, and I've always been fairly vocal about that on Instagram. And Grania, well, I mean, goodness, there's nothing the woman can't do, quite frankly. It's
pretty much, yeah.
It's quite depressing. And she's just amazing. She has an incredible brain, an incredible ability to communicate. I don't have quite the same level as her, but I do have a huge passion. And so we got talking about my return to run journey postnatally and how unsuccessful it was, how infuriated I was by the lack of evidence around, but also the conflicting, confusing information out there. And if I, as a clinician, was struggling, how on earth was the general
normal people,
public, the normal ladies struggling to get back to running? I was tired of hearing about in clinic how women returning to running and then just developing pelvic floor dysfunction, or how sadly they never returned to running postnatally because of the pelvic floor issues that they suffered from. So Grania and I got talking and we thought, hang on a minute, there's a guy that kind of knows his stuff about running. We don't consider return to running as just a pelvic health issue. It's a whole systems return to run that we need to consider. And so we thought, well, why on earth aren't we collaborating with the big guns in MSK world and bringing together kind of what we know? There's not a huge amount of evidence out there, as you know. And really, truly, we just wanted to get the conversation started. We wanted to tap into academics and say, hello, there's no research out here. So if we state this, could you possibly do something about it? And that just opened up a huge world for us, where the academics suddenly said, oh, hang on a minute, these guys kind of maybe know what they're talking about, because we're clinicians on the front line, we see what's happening. And I guess, again, through social media, people just got talking about it, because it's one of the big things postnatally that women want to get back to. And just having an element of guidance is really important. These are not, I'm sure these are going to develop and develop and develop, because so much research is needed, but they were a conversation starter. And it's been so exciting, hasn't it? Because we're just seeing, as you say, such a huge blow up of women's health, female athletes, and it's really, really exciting.
I think so. I think, beyond the excitement of it, I just think it's normalizing the conversation around pelvic health. But, I really loved what you said, that it's a whole person approach as well, because you can't separate, pelvic health from mental health, from hormonal health. And it's really important that we're able to, yes, zoom in and say, could there be a levator avulsion here? And that's what's driving the problems. But also to be able to zoom out and really look at how running or any type of exercise, is so beneficial in so many ways. Like, again, we have wonderful people like Laurie Forner, who's doing work on pelvic organ prolapse and lifting and CrossFit and running, and she's a genius. And another lady with a huge brain. But also physios like people like Brendan Stubbs, looking at the importance of running and exercise in general for mental health. And if we think about, the pandemic that we're still going through, running and exercise in general is such an important moderator of the stress response, of metabolic health, of all those different things. And for women to be told they can't run, or they shouldn't run, or they'll never run again, or to limit themselves because of leaking or feelings of prolapse, it's devastating.
Yeah, it really is. And it doesn't need, what's so frustrating is, as you know and have been preaching about for years and years, is it doesn't need to be that way. That's what's so frustrating. We have solutions here. I just feel that we still have so much work in getting that message out there. That's, as you rightly say, in our bubble, I feel the world knows about pelvic health, but it is a bubble, and it's really easy to forget that. And it's really easy or important that we remember that we've got to keep banging the drum. As much as we feel we've told everyone, we definitely haven't, have we?
Well, not yet. We're working on it. But like, that's why I love the title of your book, because, over the years, and I wonder if this resonates with you as well, I've seen so many women postnatally, perimenopausally, and they come along for a women's health appointment and they start improving, and they usually start improving pretty quickly. And first you have the relief, the joy, but then it can almost segue into a little bit of anger. And that's the question I've been asked so many times over the year. Why did no one tell me that this was out there?
100%.
It's so frustrating, isn't it?
beyond infuriating. It is the one thing that women will always say to me. They're quite accepting often of the symptoms they have, but they just say, well, why on earth do people not tell me that this might happen? Because when you understand, when you have information, it empowers you, it gives you an ability to control, but also to prevent some of these things happening. And that's the big thing. There's so much we can do to prevent pelvic floor dysfunction, and yet that's just not happening enough, in my opinion. I mean, I think really we need to start educating women about pelvic health as teenagers. Excuse me, as I know you do as well. And I do really think that's how we tap into this and make big change. But what I would love is for women, obviously, to read this book just as they're considering starting a family or have just fallen pregnant. But it's interesting because I was speaking to one of the PR girls who was helping me with PR on the book, and she was 23, and she read it and she said, well, I'm definitely not having a child now. And I thought, oh no, that was not the reason or any way the message that I wanted to convey within the book. And that's because she's 23, and I'm pleased she's not yet thinking about having a family. She's got other priorities. But I hope one day she'll pick it back up again and say, oh, thank goodness, now I understand. Perhaps I have prevented some things happening. And if I haven't, that's okay, because actually, I think you're telling me that quite a lot of this is manageable and treatable, and it really is. It's just infuriating that that everyone doesn't know it. I just want the world to know it.
Absolutely. Well, I think your book is a really important step on this path. But I think, doesn't it start with really promoting health literacy, as you said, at a young age? Because how many women do we ask, so what day of your cycle are you on? And they look at you, they've no idea.
Absolutely.
And I think sometimes this journey to postnatal health actually starts with an awareness of menstrual health, and what's happening, and just we've become so dissociated from our bodies, and particularly from the waist down.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's what we really need to start doing, is just normalizing the conversations about pelvic health. And while some things might be common, but they're not normal, and there's almost always, as you said, something that we can do about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we as pelvic health physios are really well placed to do that. I don't think we're very good at promoting ourselves, and fitness professionals, are brilliant, but they are so much better at marketing what they do than we are. And I think there has to be a huge change amongst our profession as to how we promote ourselves. We are really amazing, and yet I know more fitness professionals promoting pelvic health than I do pelvic health physios promoting pelvic health. And don't get me wrong, there's a place for us both to do it. I think we should all be doing it, but I wish more of us did it. And when you talk about menstruation and people starting to realise the importance of pelvic health. I was speaking to Professor Dame Leslie Reagan the other day, who is now the chair for the wellbeing of women, and this is her big drive now, to start pushing health literacy at an earlier age. And she wants pelvic health physios involved to help her do that. And I'm just thinking, this is an opportunity now. This is our moment, I think, to really start being the go-tos. And this is where I'm hoping, or what in part hope the book does, is promote us. It's very much a signposter to pelvic health physio. It is. I won't apologize for that, because I do think we're keystone for this. And so yes, I hope, I make no apologies if everyone's waiting lists go up for pelvic health physios, because women want us, they want our help, and that's really cool.
They need us. Yeah, absolutely.
They do need us.
And I think, I fully respect the position that not everybody wants an internal examination.
Absolutely.
But having said that, it's such an informative process in terms of what is actually happening inside, in terms of structural changes, coordination, and I think that is where, pelvic health physios really need to kind of showcase that skill, that yes, we have, because like most of us, I mean, I think you and I both came from a very similar background in terms of musculoskeletal sports, into the field of obstetrics and gynecology, via our own obstetric adventures.
Absolutely.
so I think being able to bring that whole perspective, I really like this, Carolyn Van Dyken from Canada has this wonderful phrase about pelvic health, that it's really just orthopedics in a cave.
I love that.
Isn't that brilliant?
That's amazing.
Yeah. So it's
so true though.
It's the same principle, and you can't just look at what's happening in the pelvic floor, particularly if we're talking about return to running, without thinking about what's happening in the lumbar spine, in the adductors, in the hamstrings. All of those things work together. And then, of course, like we said, the whole psychosocial aspect of running as well, and the effect that that can have, and then how the psychosocial impacts pelvic health. And it's just this beautiful full circle, of whole person-centered care that we're all supposed to be embracing. But I think we have, again, we just have to keep having these conversations. And
I think it's having the conversations. I think it would be really helpful if, when I was a student, as a physio student, I didn't really learn anything about pelvic health. In fact, pretty sure I don't even know if the pelvic floor muscle was mentioned. It was very much glossed over.
Back in the late 19th century or 19th century, when I was a physio, as my daughter likes to tell me, when I first graduated, there wasn't a mention of pelvic floor muscles. So
bonkers, right?
It's so crazy, because it's literally all
so crazy. I know, and it is crazy, because you think, if we're not getting it, if we as the physio world aren't learning about it, how on earth are we expecting other people to appreciate what we're doing? So there's just so much change that's required. But going back to the internal examination, I think we are really good at educating women that it's not a big deal. I know it can be intimidating to have an internal examination, but we are really well placed at educating women as to the benefits of it, and actually informing women as to why it is so important. And I know it's not for everyone, but I agree with you, the benefits of it are immense, but we need to communicate that to women. We also need to communicate it to doctors and nurses as to why we do it. I reckon we are the only profession that also practice on each other. Do you know that? I was having this conversation with a doctor the other day.
I think we're mental. The look on their faces when you tell them what happens at physio courses, they're aghast. They are just... I'm
not surprised.
Oh, yeah.
I did a course with Holly Herman, and it was amazing, but we certainly got to know every single part of each other. But what I think is very important about that is, as we do it on each other, we can relate that to the patient and say, do you know what? I've had 30 other women looking at my vulva, and it's not my best. It wasn't my best moment, but it also definitely wasn't my worst moment. And I think because we can relate so intensely with that, that's a really powerful tool as well to convey.
Definitely. And that air of empathy and compassion, and also time, because that's another thing that we can bring to the table, and that we're able to integrate the external, the internal, the bowel with the bladder, with the spine, with the brain. It all has to be looked at in conjunction with each other. How would you say your identity as a runner, because we were talking even a little bit before we started recording about the psychological benefits of running, and where does pelvic health fit into all of this? How did your identity as a runner evolve, going from being pregnant to postnatal to where you are now? Like, what have you learned along the way that you wish other people knew?
I wish I'd been kinder to myself during my pregnancy. I was a big runner before my pregnancy. Then I suffered from hyperemesis throughout both of my pregnancies. I was really, really poorly, barely unable to really get out of bed, if I'm honest, at some stage, through some stages. I had a big vision before I fell pregnant that I'd have this Instagrammable pregnancy where I would be showing everyone my running and how amazingly I was doing. And do you know, I didn't do any exercise because I just wasn't well enough. And I'm a huge advocate for exercise during pregnancy. I think it's really important, but I also think it's really important for women to understand that if they can't exercise, that it's okay, because I love the fact we're flipping everything here and getting women to exercise, but we do have to be mindful of those who simply cannot exercise because of pain or just being too unwell. So I'd say be kinder to yourself if you're a runner and you can't run during pregnancy. Postnatally, I wish I'd been more patient. I was so desperate to run. I didn't have the information I have now, and I did return to running too soon. I do have a small prolapse. That was possibly already there anyway, who knows, but it was certainly irritated by the running. And I wish I'd respected the rehab process more. So I'm passionate about it because I've been there. I've got the t-shirt. I don't want you necessarily to have the same t-shirt. And I am also through the other side of seeing that, yes, pelvic floor dysfunction can have an impact on running. It really, really can. It was a horrible feeling when you have a prolapse and it's not rehabbed and you're running on it. But I would say to people, there is hope and light at the end of the tunnel. But you do, in my opinion, have to work with someone, a pelvic health physio or a fitness professional who understands, who really is passionate about the sporting element, because not all pelvic health physios are, you know, it doesn't all tick our box necessarily, always tick our box. So I do think find someone that's passionate about getting you back to running as well, if that's what you want to do. But remember, if you can't necessarily get back to running, there are other forms of exercise that are really, really effective. And when I couldn't run for 18 months postnatally, I found loads of things that I loved. I hated strength training, happen to really like it now because I was forced to do it. And so don't be too tunnel visioned with running. You have to explore lots of different options to be a better runner, I think, as well.
Well, and the benefits of strength training for running are out there as well, you know.
Massive.
So it all, my experience working with runners, you know, because when I was working just purely in MSK before I started with the pelvic health rabbit hole, was I used to actually not be enthusiastic about treating runners because, you know, we were saying that the last thing and the worst thing you can say to a runner is don't run.
Don't run.
Because they will. So what I'm hearing you say is I can run, right? Or they'll yes you and then just go and run anyway. And it's all about kind of framing it in that this is a path back to running, because that's what's important to you, not my goals, but your goals. And to be able to do that, I just want to briefly just circle back to something you were saying about exercising during pregnancy, because I was listening to your podcast yesterday with Sophie Power, and she was talking about when she was pregnant, she was having, you know, a little bit of niggles, you know, a little bit of pelvic girdle pain, a little bit of sensations of heaviness and dragging. And her original midwife was super pro exercise, brilliant, let's do it. But then she went and she saw a substitute midwife, you know, her original one was off, and that midwife, oh no, back, don't stand for too long, don't exercise, don't lift anything heavy. And I think, you know, we have to just be aware of that kind of nociceptive narrative that can be out there as well. So it is about listening to your body, isn't it? But realizing that it's about tailoring it and just having that kind of bespoke approach. It's not a pair of elasticated, you know, trousers. It's not going to be one size fits all. I think that's that's the benefit of having an individualized assessment, isn't it?
Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head. It's about the individual. So someone like Sophie, and I can talk very openly about her because the whole world knows about her story. She is an incredible athlete. She has an athletic mind. She's an ultra runner. This woman doesn't feel pain like other people. And if you were to turn around and say to someone like Sophie, you aren't running. In fact, she was told after her first baby, she'd probably never run again after having her baby. And she literally told the physio to leave. And she found someone that would work with her rather than against her. And that's the thing. Sophie's very aware of her symptoms and her dysfunctions, but what she's brilliant at is working with you to find ways that will tap into her need to exercise. So we did loads and loads of fast, crazy hill walking. I mean, she walks faster than I can run. Everything she did was very run related. So we always made it relatable to her running, and we always had a goal in mind. Sophie's going to run whether you tell her not to. So you have to work with someone like that and find ways to tap into her psyche. And she's doing amazingly. She's about to do some other crazy run in a few months, which, you know, not necessarily I agree with, but for her own mental health, she feels she has to do it. And I have given her all the educational tools as to the pros and cons as to why not to do this ultra run. And it's up to her. She's an adult. She knows the pros and cons for doing it. She's using a pessary, again, very open about all of this. And she loves her pessary, and it allows her to run. She has still got a lot of rehab to do, and I have to remind her of that. But we have to find ways to work with women rather than against them, because they want to do this stuff and it's their right to do it. So, you know, we have to just work as a team. And I think that's it. Patient physio is a team. It shouldn't be two separate entities working against each other.
Because it used to be that sort of a power differential, isn't it? You must do what I tell you to do. Whereas I think now we really need to be more collaborative. We have to realize that, you know, it has to be a multidisciplinary approach as well, you know, and the patient is front and center, you know, and it's about her goals and how we can help her meet her goals, not necessarily our goals.
Absolutely. And what we have to all remember is patients are almost patient experts now. They have so much information from social media. They are well informed. Certainly a lot of my patients are. And they will read the research. So you have to then be well informed and up to date with your evidence to make sure that your thoughts align. And it is it is an absolute collaborative work in progress with the patient as the center, 100%.
And, you know, like, that's what I think is, again, like, not to be like super fangirly, but, you know, I am. So, like, you know, your book is referenced. And like there's there's links to articles in the back, and you know I love a good index, you know, and the references, because I'm super nerdy. But it's so comprehensive without being intimidating, and it's it's super accessible as well. It's really conversationally written, in that you wouldn't feel intimidated about giving it to somebody with a proviso. Oh, it's a bit heavy, you know. This is a book you could give any woman, you know, at any level, I think. Sophie, sorry, I'm still thinking about the Sophie podcast.
You're thinking about Sophie.
I am thinking I'm in awe of Sophie.
So am I.
Amazing. So do head over and listen to that podcast episode, because really Sophie will blow your mind.
Yeah.
What would be key pieces of information that you would love a postnatal mum to hear about? Like, if you had to just distill it into a couple of key points of wisdom.
I would love for them to listen to their body. And if they are leaking urine, feel heaviness in their vagina, just something doesn't feel right, do not bury your head in the sand. Prioritize yourself. Speak to your doctor and ask to see a pelvic health physiotherapist. In my dream world, we'd all see a pelvic health physiotherapist postnatally. That's the goal. I would love to say also enjoy being a mum, a new mum. We have so much pressure on us to bounce back, and bounce back's a myth. It doesn't exist. It's rubbish. You have to give your body time to heal. And I really strongly believe that if you can think of the fact you've just had a baby, if you had just had knee surgery, I know it's becoming a very used analogy now, but if you had just had knee surgery, you would rehabilitate yourself, often with the help of a physio. You have just gone through probably the most life-changing event you'll ever go through, until you hit the menopause, and therefore you need to rehabilitate, and it's perfectly fine. And think of it in building blocks. Your rehab should be in building blocks. You shouldn't run before you can walk. That's the big thing. And just nurture your body, love yourself. I just you know, I know as a mum all the love is over to the baby, and that's the way it should be, but you are the focus of the unit. Women are the cornerstone, I think, of society, and if you are functioning well, your baby, your family unit will function well. So you have to self-prioritize. There should be no mum guilt. I don't believe in mum guilt. I think it's rubbish. It should go.
Absolutely. From the revolution.
Yeah, I know. Feminism.
Absolutely. You know what? I think that's a really brilliant analogy, though, because if a runner has an ACL repair, they understand there's a pathway. And that's, I think, the genius of the return to running guidelines as well. Timelines.
Yeah.
And ideally timelines with an individual
100%
on it, you know. And I think that's because for any athlete at any stage, whether we're talking elite or, you know, just literally starting with a couch to 5K, this is so important that, you know, you pace yourself, you listen and obey your body, and just, you know, be nice to yourself.
It's not asking much, is it?
You just made a new human. Come on.
I know, we totally undervalue what we can do as women, and there has to be a change. I think there is the change is coming, but it has to start with you. And I think the perinatal period is a brilliant time to tap into you. So do it.
Definitely do it. And this is your manual for doing it.
Oh, thank
Emma,
you.
I cannot thank you enough for.
Oh my God, thank you.
Pearls of wisdom everywhere, knowledge bombs. It's been a pleasure. And if people want to check out your podcast, where can they find that?
Oh, so that's with me and my lovely friend Grania Donnelly. We're at Your Cervix _ the podcast on Instagram. I think that's right. But at Your Cervix, look it. It's terrible, isn't it? Look it up on Spotify or Apple. We're on all the channels.
Perfect. And do you have a website that people can check out, or what's your social media handle?
Yes. So my social media handle on Instagram is at PhysioMumUK. On Twitter, which I'm not so good at, Emma _PhysioMum, and my website is www.physiomum.co.uk, and you can download the running guidelines there. You can get my book there, and you can also find the podcast there as well.
Perfect. And again, available in all good bookshops.
It is. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks a million, Emma.
Oh, thank you so much.